think, Chantal, the digitization journey had obviously started some time ago in the insurance industry. What is the same in any digital journey? You have your early adopters, people that adapt quickly. As we were saying earlier on, children with cell phones is a classic example, as opposed to maybe the older generation. But what happened with COVID in April last year was that you saw that it was almost like a reset in the industry. Certainly, as you know, I'm in the health sector, where people were not able to operate in their traditional way as they had done before. And so what we found was that it bridged the gap where people had maybe been slow in following the digital journey, and preferring their old style of should we say, sales and things with face-to-face meetings and all those good things. And following COVID, they just had to change. They had to meet from a safety point of view in a digital space with Zoom meetings or MS Teams. So what we found was quite a shift. It probably, in our case, slowed down for 2 months or so, and then our volumes were back up to the normal levels within 3 months. So that was quite a change, and there was a lesson there for all of us in terms of, you might have all this digital capability. Everybody talks about what they can do, but the trick is, are people using it? And is it helping the customer experience, quite frankly? Because it's one thing to be going on to websites or doing online forms, but if you don't feel you're getting a benefit out of it, then sometimes you will be a bit reluctant to do it. I can think about as well in the early days, and I can remember how self-conscious my team was when I was talking to them on MS Teams or Zoom meetings, and the ladies at times would be horrified because I hadn't given them notice that they had to do their hair or what have you. And I think we've just become a bit more relaxed now with these things and understand them. And it's become, I think, more and more working from home is just now working from the office almost. It's there's a nice connection there, and I think also what I've noticed as well, and I'm talking in the broker market and also in my family, is how things like WhatsApp videos are commonly used now if there's a family get-together or discussion, because we're all over the country and in some cases the world. And we've always known that this facility has been there, but I think it's the awareness we've seen with Zoom and with MS Teams and the other media that I think has just triggered this adoption now, experimentation, which comes so much easier, shall we say, to the millennials than to some of us that are a bit older. But yeah, that's how the digital path has gone on our side, Chantal. I think in a nutshell, I think it's been beneficial to both businesses, the insurance sector in particular, and the customers. And customers, you must, in the insurance space, you must put into the client, but also most of us have a strong broker support that sell our products. So we have two customer bases. I think that what you've seen as well over the last, I would say over the last year, I think you will have seen a lot of improvements on very basic things. Like everybody had a website. That was like a ticket to the game. But as we mentioned earlier, Chantal, having the website is one thing, but to meaningfully and easily be able to navigate around it. And for instance, if you've got a claim and you're wondering what to do, before it would maybe be a drop down, here's a claim form. Now, quite often on a website, it'll be possibly a video or an infographic that'll explain what to do. So I think because customers have been needing to make use of it, I think that the insurance sector, and I would think it applies to, well, it obviously applies to all sectors, have been looking very critically at the customer experience when somebody's relating to their website and for what they're doing and the sort of information that they're looking for. I think you were saying they're impacted in the sector. Maybe just a couple of very straightforward ones in as I say, in the health sector. You'd have an insurance application form filled in, usually with your broker in a discussion, and that would be submitted, and in time you'd receive confirmation of cover and things like that. Whereas now, on example, with let's say with Zoom or any of the things, you can have a split screen. You've got the Zoom, the conversation. You've got the application form on the other side. You can complete it with the client, go through the whole thing, complete it with him, and he'll get automatic, usually almost instantaneous acceptance of cover. So that's bringing a benefit to the insurer because it's a seamless process. And also for the broker and his client, he will get an automatic notification of being on cover. So that type of thing has been quite useful. And another area where we've seen it is that in the health space, quite often there's a lot of documentation, unfortunately, involved and all those things. And quite often, although we all try to get it right, where the things are submitted once and everything is in line and gets processed, it doesn't really happen like that. Quite often there's one form missing or there's a signature missing or there's something. Whereas now with this digital thing, it's so easy to close that loop very quickly and go back almost instantaneously to say, hang on, we just need this, or could you clarify something? So I think it also, first of all, gives the client more interaction, let's say with the claims process, but at the same time enables him to get his payout quicker. And we've certainly seen a reduction in the period between when a person has been hospitalized and when they've been paid. So that is a benefit that the clients hopefully are feeling there, Chantal. It's an interesting question, Chantal. I think the important thing, and I'm sure all insurers feel the same way, certainly from our point of view, we don't lose track that our business is a people-focused business. So at the end of the day, as I've mentioned before, the customer experience, whether it's a broker or the client, has got to be at such a level that there's a bond that the client and the broker feels that we are honouring the agreement, the contract, and the level of trust is high. So always people focused. The interesting thing though is that the more data you have, and you touched on data there, is that you get a much more, in IT terms, granular picture of the client, because you get so much data nowadays that you can understand the client and all those good things. But the important thing is not having the data as much as how you use the data to improve the customer experience with his interactions with you. In other words, in days gone by, you would get should we say, SMS mail shots for insurance cover and things like that. Nowadays, you know who's opted in, who's opted out. You also know the profile of the client, and you can also look at previous trends as to the profile of the client that's been interested and those that haven't been interested. So there's always been in the insurance industry a strong focus on data, because fundamental to it is risk management. So understanding your exposure, your client profiles and risk profiles and things like that are vitally important. But I think that the important thing is to take these learnings from the data, so that you then start developing some best practices going forward, that the client feels that they're listening and that you're relevant to them, because we get bombarded with so many things nowadays, you know, with emails, with offers, and it can be from clothing to sporting equipment and stuff like that, that when somebody opens an email, looks at it, they want to be captured immediately. Otherwise, they're just going to discard it. Its relevance is just so important. And particularly when I look at our data in the millennial space, some of the older profile will be a little more, should I say, tolerant, but the younger profiles, no, they haven't got the patience. You know, they'll go to somebody who understands them and is talking to their interests and things. So yeah, data is a fascinating thing, and things like data warehouses and that have been, they've been for 20 years. But I think particularly in this era now, it's to really make sure you're maximizing that interaction for both the client, otherwise he'll leave you, and for yourselves as well, so that you're getting the right result. I think it's quite difficult to give an overall. As I say, I'm in the health space, but if we just look at it overall, it's the impact of COVID on businesses and individuals has been varied and meaningful. It's been, we've seen restaurants and a lot of the smaller businesses, the entrepreneurial businesses, just struggling to meet commitments such as rental and things like that. So if I look in the broader scale, the business interruption that the businesses have gone through, and then more recently, sadly, the looting that took place and things like that. There are two things that, just as an insurer, in a broad, wearing a broader hat, if I can use that, I think that you're going to see a tightening up or a much more focus on policy wordings and things like that, where people have maybe been thinking they've got cover, or insurers thinking they've been protected. I think you'll see a rejig of those things, and you'll see a pricing impact, I would think, because of the scale of the the pandemic, which let's face it, is going to be with us certainly in South Africa to the end of the calendar year and beyond. So a broader sort of answer, but in the health space, if I just look at it, how has it impacted? I think an interesting thing is that the people have become more aware of their health. They're seeing, whether it's on Sky News, CNN, ENCA, SABC, COVID is mentioned on a daily basis. They're looking at hospitals. They're looking at people sadly really struggling. And so it's created greater awareness. I'm sure on the medical aid side as well, they see it. We've certainly seen people asking questions about their cover, their gap cover, and also what we've noticed is that our persistency levels over the period have remained better than they've remained in the last 5 years. And by that I mean that I think people are, if they're going to trim their expenses, they're not trimming their expenses on their health cover because they know that at this moment in time it's probably more important to them than some of their other cover. The impact in the space, and I touched on it with an earlier answer, Chantal, is that we noticed when we had the first hard lockdown, April, May last year, a slowdown in our new business volumes. And I think it was people thinking that, okay, we'll have this lockdown for 4 weeks and then we'll be back to normal almost immediately. So I think a lot of people, I think, almost pressed a pause button instead of a reset button. But what happened after that was that they realized that things are not going to change. And in fact, this is going to be with us a lot longer. And then we saw our volumes and interactions return to pre-COVID levels. So I think that's maybe a good explanation of pause as opposed to as a reset. And also what we noticed is that because when they talk about COVID, they talk about people with comorbidities such as hypertension and things like that, and older age groups being more susceptible to the more severe conditions. We can also see that in our business retention numbers, that the older people have tended to have got a really good persistency profile with us. So it's sort of, I think it's the classic sort of, if I can say PR thing, which maybe not, but they're seeing it in the press and they're behaving, they're showing the behavior that the press has been indicating and the news has been indicating. So yeah, I think maybe a bit of a long-winded response there, Chantal, but that would be as I see the impact. Again, an interesting question, and the what this has shown us, we talk about in business disruptors such as Uber, Airbnb, and things like that. So the theory is quite well known about the digital journey and what you need to do with your businesses. Sometimes the practice lags behind the theory, as it does in most cases. I think the first lesson that we've learned is that this is a learning journey. It's actually not a position now where you make a plan, and then you say, okay, that's how, this is what we're going to do for the next 2 years. If anything, it's told us that we need to understand that we're dealing with a challenge at the moment of, let's say, COVID and as I mentioned earlier, the recent riots. We've got recession, most certainly, on the horizon for us in the longer term, and for most countries as they try and repay the cost on their health services and things like that. So I think that whilst we've dealt with two challenges, we're going to have additional challenges coming along that could be even more impactful. When I'm looking at things, the impact of climate change and things like that on businesses is going to be enormous as well going forward. There's been recent discussions now that says that if something doesn't change in the next 10 years, we're not going to be able to recover from it. And that is going to be felt in businesses. So painting the dark, if that's a dark picture, which I don't mean it to be, what does that mean to Turnberry, and I would guess to most businesses? I think it means you've got to be agile. You know, this is not something that this has been an interesting, and well, as the Japanese say, we live in interesting times. But I think that the lesson that we'll all learn is that you've got to be agile. You've got to be flexible in your approach to people, and your systems and your processes have got to meet these challenges. So rather than than setting yourself up for one, if I can say, challenge, your structure of your business needs to be such that wherever the challenge comes from, you're agile enough to move quickly. So I think that it's quite interesting. I think the bigger businesses are we tend to think of a bigger business, whether it's a bank or an insurer or whatever, moves in very deliberate steps and goes forward. But you can see that with the challenges we've recently had, even big businesses will need that entrepreneurial flexibility. Otherwise, they will lose the clients they've got, because, as I said earlier on, the clients will look to people that are fulfilling their needs, and definitely there's so much information available to anybody on any topic that you could start in the morning, and I don't say you'd make the best decision by the following day, but you'd at least have a number of questions that you'd want to refer to. Let's say it's an investment guy, to understand the product. So people are much more informed. So they're going to want to deal with companies that can answer their questions, provide solutions, and 9 times out of 10, they'll want to do this on a cell phone, quite frankly. It's not going to be, okay, I'm going to look at my financial thing. I want to sit in front of my computer, my laptop, and I want to now be in my financial mode. No, it won't be that. It'll be you're sitting on a train or a bus or whatever, and think, I've just got this question at the back of my mind, and then you just go and have a look for it. That is the nature of where we are. I think I would sum it up as saying that you need a flexible structure that's client focused, and you can't do that with systems. You can only do that, in my mind, with 3 building blocks. You need the right people, you need the right business processes, and then you need the right systems to deliver on the promise. So that would be where from a Turnberry perspective, that's where we are. It's a question of making sure now we're learning lessons all the time. As I say, it's an ongoing learning journey, and really just trying to make the experience better for the clients, but also for the staff as well, Chantal. You know, everyone becomes client focused, and I know that's very important, but you want a flexible team that is enjoying the environment and enjoying what they're working with. An interesting stat that I was looking at last week is that probably 20% of our processing is done out of core business hours now, because people have got the flexibility of working from home, and it depends on the family. You know, sometimes a younger family, their moment of peace is maybe 9 o'clock in the evening, where they just want to close a few things off and stuff like that. So we're seeing that and over weekends and whatnot. So I think that people are also going. I don't think that. I saw on Sky News, I think it was yesterday, that they were trying to insist on, I think it was the civil servants, the government departments, to go back to the office. I'm not sure that is the right thing. I think flexibility and stuff are the name of the game. Okay.